Closed captioning of this program is made possible by the Fireman's Fund Foundation.
Tonight, with thousands of cases in jeopardy because of a drug lab scandal, the San Francisco DA calls for the testing of seized narcotics to be taken out of police hands. After a 6-month delay, Senator Abel Maldonado picks up the votes to become lieutenant governor. Operation Knockout succeeds in a major gang bust in Salinas. And in celebration of Earth Day this week, a conversation with the Sierra Club's new director. Coming up next. Good evening, I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me tonight on our news panel, Julie Reynolds, reporter with the Monterey Herald on the gang bust in Salinas. Josh Richmond, legal and political affairs reporter for the Oakland Tribune with political updates. And Rachel Gordon, staff writer with the San Francisco Chronicle on San Francisco's continuing crime lab scandals. Rachel Gordon, this scandal started, well, with some missing drugs quite a while back with the police crime lab. Where is the case now?
The case now is kind of up in the air in terms of people don't know what's going to happen, but there's a very robust investigation going on into what happened. Let's go back a little bit about how this whole thing happened. A crime technician in the police drug lab, San Francisco's Police Department drug lab, has been accused of skimming some drugs, mainly cocaine, saying that what she said is, yes, I did use some drugs in the lab, but it's drugs that kind of fell on my workspace. I didn't go and actually take things on my own just to do that. It just happened to be there. People are maybe not buying that too much. There's been a huge ripple effect, though, with what happened. When it came to light, which is in February when the police department started to open an investigation, they said, look, we've got tremendous problems in this drug lab. In the crime lab, already 550 cases have had to be dismissed. The district attorney for San Francisco is saying we might be refiling those cases. The public defender in San Francisco, Jeff Adachi, says that might just be the tip of the iceberg. He might seek to dismiss thousands of drug cases going back years. So that's what they're trying to figure out. The police department expects to wrap up its probe in May. There are outside people looking into it. And just today on Friday, District Attorney Kamala Harris said, look, we want the state attorney general to come in here and to handle the probe as well. We don't think the police department can do it on its own. We don't think we can do it on our own either, because some of her attorneys have been involved, not with wrongdoing necessarily, but they're very intimately involved in the drug cases as well.
Rachel, it's still a little bit hard to understand why with that many cases, especially thousands of cases, because somebody's been taking or is having fall off their workbench cocaine. When people go into court and they testify, they have to testify that, boy, on this day the police department made an arrest and they seized 2 grams of cocaine off this person, and it's been tested and it looks like, yes, it is indeed cocaine and it's 2 grams, all this stuff. And you want to be able to keep the evidence as closely protected as you can, because lawyers are very good at getting cases dismissed on technicalities. So if it was 2 grams that's reported in the police report and it ends up being that there's actually only 1.5 grams, or it could be a lot more than that, 1 pound compared to half a pound, that can be used to say, well, if there's a problem with this, isn't there a problem with a lot of other things? It really brings in, there's a lot of doubt about the veracity of the testimony coming from the crime lab technicians, as well as was the evidence ever tampered with.
Now, a political question, big surprise coming from me. Kamala Harris is running for Attorney General in the Democratic primary in June. One of her rivals, Chris Kelly, has been hammering away at her for weeks now, trying to lay a lot of this at her door. both in terms of the way it happened, the way that she's reacted. What do you see the political fallout for her being?
I think she's in a really tough spot. She came out very strong Friday saying that this is an outrage, it's a scandal, all those things that you expected perhaps they would have said a while ago. Now, how might she be implicated in this? She's not directly, but perhaps her office is. One of her top drug prosecutors raised a red flag back in the fall in November and going, I think, and wrote an email to her supervisor right under Harris saying, I think there might be a real problem in the drug lab. With this one technician, Deborah Madden, there's some red flags going up with that. We need to be concerned. That seems to have been ignored or neglected or lost or something. People don't quite know why there wasn't a reaction to that. Now, the person who received the email, while he didn't take the account of Deborah Madden in, saying that this is serious, he did, though, say we've got real problems with the police department's drug lab. It's not just something on this one technician necessarily. There have been a lot of problems. One of the big ones is understaffing, that these people were processing a lot more cases than is the norm in drug labs. Auditors went in and found a lot of stray cats in there, boxes strewn about. The evidence wasn't really kept very well. The question is, what did the district attorney know? Did they ignore these signs? What about the police brass? What happened to the supervisors in the police department going up the rank? It's interesting to see, too, Chief George Gascon, who's fairly new police chief in San Francisco, less than a year, he came in very strongly and said, we're going to do something about it. We're going to hold everyone accountable. We're going to turn this thing upside down and try to start again. In a way, the timing is very fortunate for the police department and for Mayor Gavin Newsom, who's running for lieutenant governor, because they can say, look, we have a new regime in here in the police department. In fact, Gascon put one of his top lieutenants deputies who came from Los Angeles with him in charge of the drug lab, in charge of the investigation, and saying, okay, let's really get to the bottom of this.
Final question. Why have no charges been filed at all so far?
Well, charges haven't been filed because the investigation's still ongoing. One thing is the Attorney General will be looking into it. The police department's saying we're going to do this in May. The technician has since resigned. She's been brought up on a kind of more minor drug charge. But in terms of if there's wrongdoing, that's still to be determined. Whether it's going to be serious wrongdoing, it could just be a simple misdemeanor at this point.
Well, not good in San Francisco, whether politically or otherwise, because a lot of money is spent in getting those drug convictions or those cases before the court.
A lot of time and a lot of heart and soul went into them, too.
Well, speaking of time, Josh Richmond, let's talk about the governor's attention in trying to get Abel Maldonado nominated for lieutenant governor. Now, a few months back, he wasn't able to do it. But what's changed? Why now?
Well, because now there's something in it for the legislature. I saw some news outlet yesterday reported that the legislature had finally put politics aside to confirm Abel Maldonado. It couldn't be further from the truth. This was all politics all the time. And basically what Assembly Democrats did is they waited until now so that by confirming him now, they can put pressure on the governor to consolidate the special election to replace Maldonado in the state Senate with the November general election. And by doing so, they think they'll have a much better turnout and a better chance of flipping that seat from Republican to Democrat. If they manage to do that, that puts them within one vote of that magic 2/3 majority that they would need to pass budget and tax bills without any Republican votes.
This is very important then to the Democrats.
It's very important to the Democrats. Not that Maldonado be lieutenant governor, obviously. I don't think they care. I think they're relatively confident that whoever the Democratic nominee is going to be it Gavin Newsom or Janice Hahn from Los Angeles, that either one of them could take out Abel Maldonado, assuming he's even going to be the Republican nominee. He will have the advantage of incumbency. But they are solely concerned with who gets to replace him in the 15th State Senate District. They want to have Assemblyman John Laird take that seat, if at all possible.
Let me go back, though, and say it's not a shoo-in, though, that a Democrat would win the lieutenant governor's race, right? I mean, Maldonado's a moderate. He's Latino, which is very important in the state of California for a statewide office for that. I mean, he seems like he might have some traction even with the Democrats, right? Because he was paying attention to that office.
Not a shoo-in at all, but remember, he would still have to win the Republican primary in order to run again and keep the seat after November. He is not the only Republican in the primary race. Sam Amistad, state senator from the Sacramento area, from Grass Valley, is in the race, was not happy with the idea of Maldonado getting confirmed. But is much more conservative, generally speaking, not the moderate that Maldonado makes himself out to be, and so might fare better in Republican primaries. Republican primaries here in California have tended to not favor the moderates.
Any chance that he could pull a Charlie Crist and go an independent?
I wouldn't put it past him, because I think he's a very ambitious man. I think he definitely wants to be lieutenant governor because he sees it as a stepping stone to yet higher things. It could happen that way. I don't think he would win as an
Yeah, I
independent.
report in part of his district, and voters there are just asking, why does this matter? Why? Who cares about the lieutenant governor?
Yeah, the lieutenant governor, that office gets no love at all. The fact of the matter is, it is a seat on the Board of Regents for the university and for the Board of Trustees for the state university system, on several other important boards and commissions. He gets to appoint members to various boards and commissions that do have a lot of influence in the state. But ultimately, like I said, they're far less concerned with who the next lieutenant governor is going to be than who the next state senator from SD 15.
Josh, you want to just change a little bit to some polls that were out. Sure. At least for Republicans, they're very important this week.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Carly Fiorina will say that it's an outlier, but in the Senate race, Tom Campbell seems to have opened up a substantial lead according to the latest poll. It probably is a bit of an outlier, but she is clearly struggling with Tom Campbell, who, of course, had jumped into the race late, coming over from the governor's race. And that's turning into quite a showdown. I think Barbara Boxer is probably not thrilled with the idea of having to run against Tom Campbell, if only because he's likely to get some moderate independent crossover votes. I think she'd rather be running against Fiorina, who's more of a dyed-in-the-wool conservative Republican.
Were you surprised that Obama came out for Boxer kind of so early?
It does seem kind of early, and of course he's going to be back here in the Bay Area next month to do the same as he did in Los Angeles this week, raise a boatload of money for Boxer and the DNC and the DSCC. It does seem early, but Boxer's going to be facing a well-funded candidate no matter who it is, because the Republicans do see her, the national Republicans do see her as vulnerable. So be it Fiorina or Campbell, they're going to be looking to pick her off, and she needs money in the bank now. And
when you talked about a boatload of money, I think when the president was out, it raised something like $4 million or
$3.5 to $4 million. Yeah.
Well, in the old days, that used to seem like a lot of money. That's no money in today's world.
Not today. Oh, in the Senate, in the Senate race, the way it's been shaping up so far, it's a significant chunk of change. Now, if you jump over to the governor's race, that's lunch money, where Meg Whitman is $59 million bought in, and Steve Poizner $19 million. The latest poll in that race shows that Poizner's closing the gap somewhat, perhaps more by Meg Whitman fatigue than by Steve Poizner excitement. I've never seen a candidate so excited to be only 22 to 28 points behind. But when you compare it to the 49 points he was behind in the field poll last month, it seems absolutely rosy for him.
So
right now.
It's not politics as usual, at least from what you're telling us. Yeah. Julie, I want to turn to you because you've been covering gang activity down in the Salinas area for a very long time, and there was this drug bust. What made it so unique? Why is there so much attention being drawn to it?
Well, I think there are two reasons. This, you hear in the news all the time, there's some big gang bust somewhere, you get the press releases, but this one stood out in a number of ways, and I've been covering this for about 8 years in that area. It targeted the entire infrastructure of one of the major gangs in Salinas, and Salinas has had a terrible gang problem for about 30 years. We're going into our third generation of gang families. We had our record number of homicides last year. And so it came at a critical time in two ways. It took out that infrastructure of the Nuestra Familia, which is the most powerful gang in Salinas. It's kind of their out-of-prison headquarters. They're a prison gang that operates throughout the California prison system, but they also have regiments all over Northern California. It's a paramilitary kind of structure. And then the Norteño street gangs are kind of their foot soldiers. And Norteños are definitely the most prevalent gang in all of Northern California. So to take out that infrastructure right in their epicenter in Salinas is a very big deal. There were 44 arrest warrants issued. This is the culmination of an 8-month investigation. It was again, focused on their drug dealing activities, their business. Out of those 44 warrants, officers went out, hundreds of officers came into town yesterday morning and brought in 37 of the highest level organizers of the gang. One of them was a man named Martin Montoya, who was known as the shot caller for the city of Salinas. He has now been arraigned in San Jose on federal charges, looking at a possible life sentence. So taking out that infrastructure is a really big deal. The other part that was really important is there's a program going on right now in Salinas called Ceasefire that's being adopted in hundreds of cities now, or at least more than 100 around the country. And it's a very different way of dealing with gang violence. It's had success in Boston and in Chicago. And what it involves is bringing violent gang members into a room, and you basically give them a choice and say, we'll help you get out if you want to. If you want to stop shooting, we'll help you with jobs, with drug treatment, whatever you need to stop this violence. But if you don't, we're coming down with the full force of the law. And this operation was essentially a part of Ceasefire to show that, we're going to wipe this gang out.
This is a federal program, right? I mean, so it's the Department of Justice. Is this a local program ground up that's starting?
Ceasefire is actually sort of a grassroots movement. It came out of Harvard originally in Boston, and now it's being kind of promulgated from John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. A lot of community groups are adopting it. Chicago's done its own version. It's kind of an organic mix of, social service people mixing with cops, and the amazing thing is it's really turned people's heads around. You get cops who are calling gang members to ask how they're doing. And
so
you just go, what is going on here?
Who led the raids, and are those the same people who are trying to break up the gangs in the style that you've just mentioned?
They're two different groups. I mean, really, the raids came out of the Salinas Police Department, which is the backbone of Ceasefire. But it also we brought in, State Department of Justice, the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement was the lead agency on it, and then ATF on the federal side. So there was a lot of state and federal resources put into the raids. The Ceasefire part is definitely housed in the Salinas Police Department. And you've got gang cops who've been sort of hardcore for years for the first time now are coming and telling me, well, gee, guys can change their lives. They never would have believed it before. And we've seen a tremendous reduction in the 3 months it's been running in terms of the number of shootings. We had 1 homicide instead of 12.
Well, good work down in Salinas, solving a very deep and very scary problem.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Julie. My thanks, in fact, to all of you for joining us here tonight. And now some other stories in the news this week. PG&E smart meters have drawn fire from residents who say their rates have gone up since the digital readers were installed. PG&E says that it will test the controversial meters for discrepancies by running them alongside analog meters at 150 homes for 3 months. And up to $100 million in federal funds to conserve and restore San Francisco Bay may be on the way. Representative Jackie Speer has introduced legislation that would provide the funds for over a 10-year period. Various projects around the bay would be included, like reducing stormwater pollution, restoration of wetland habitats, and decreasing the number of invasive species. The 40th anniversary of Earth Week was celebrated this week. Environmental policies and attitudes have changed dramatically since 1970. The Sierra Club, founded in 1892 by John Muir, is one of the nation's most distinguished and influential environmental organizations. Carl Pope recently retired after 17 years as executive director, but still serves as the organization's chairman. Greg Miller from KQED's Climate Watch joins us now to talk with the new executive director, Michael Brune.
Michael Brune, thanks for giving us a piece of your weekend. I know they're becoming increasingly valuable to you these days in your new job.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Sure. But on Monday in Washington, they're going to take the wraps off the latest version of the Senate climate bill, which some are now calling the energy climate bill. It already has a lot of people in California nervous over something called federal preemption.
Sure.
The idea that it might in fact nullify state and regional attempts to regulate carbon, which California has a lot invested in so far. Do you share those concerns?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the top concerns that we have with the emerging climate language. Let's be clear, over the last 8 to 10 years, barely the only progress that we've made on climate change has been at the state and regional level. Here in California, the Pavley Act helped to increase fuel economy nationwide when it was adopted by the the Obama administration. So in the fight against climate change, we don't want to be taking away some of the most important tools that we've used to actually fight climate change. You don't make progress by losing your leverage.
Yeah, those tailpipe emissions became sort of the national standard only after a protracted battle.
Exactly.
Sierra Club's becoming kind of more of a player on the climate front, isn't it?
We are. We're taking a very multifaceted, multidisciplinary approach. A big priority for the Sierra Club over the last few years has been stopping the construction nationwide of new coal-fired power plants. To date, we've helped 128 coal plants that would have been built. We've stopped them. Now what we're doing is we're focusing on not just slowing the rate at which things get worse, but shutting old plants down and replacing them with clean energy. So that's a nationwide campaign that's happening at the local level, plant by plant by plant. And then we're complementing that by scaling up and increasing the amount of clean energy that's being made available, again at the county, state, and then federal level. The unique thing about the Sierra Club, and one of the reasons why I'm really excited to be here, is because we have a combination of really a crack legal team, really good political team, but then also 1.4 million members and supporters, chapters in every state. Mm-hmm. So we have a top-down and bottoms-up approach that I think gives us a good chance to have a deep impact.
Now, it's a national organization, but it's a San Francisco-based organization, right. California-based. What's the top priority here for you?
The top priority in California really is to scale up in a dramatic way the implementation and installation of clean energy. We're doing some of the really difficult work, particularly down in the desert, and trying to find ways in which we can site large-scale utility facilities without having a destructive impact on the desert tortoise and other rare plant and animal species.
This has become a contentious thing here. It's like, how can you come in and sort of referee this, or can you?
Sure. Well, what we want to do is, we know that clean energy will be a growth industry. We want to make sure it's done right. We don't want to replace one set of problems with another. But one of the ways of doing it right is not relying just on big utility scale solar or wind farms, but promoting more decentralized, distributed energy. A lot more solar panels on rooftops or of homes and businesses. And then also aggressively maximizing all of the gains we can get through efficiency. California has done a great job and has been a model for the nation on efficiency. We want to take some of the lessons that we've learned here and apply them nationwide.
But you can see that it will take big utility scale installations to get the job done, to get to this 33% renewables by 2020, though.
For sure, yeah, we think it'll be a combination of both. Efficiency, so that we're flattening the demand curve for energy, a lot of distributed solar at the residential and business level, and then a significant increase in big wind, big solar, so that we can start to displace and really dismantle the fossil fuel industry over time.
Now, you're known mostly, I have to say, as the guy who 10 years ago hacked into the PA system at Home Depot and in order to shame them into carrying more sustainable lumber products. You've said you don't see your hiring by the Sierra Club as a systemic sea change for the organization, but you have said you'd like to push the organization in new directions and expand the toolbox, I think were the words you used, including to embarrass and provoke when necessary. This isn't exactly business as usual at the Sierra Club. Are you going to make it an edgier, more confrontational organization?
Well, let's remember, so the work that we did at Rainforest Action Network, the job
That's where you were when you were at the Home Depot then.
Sure. The work that we were doing there was to provide political motivation. When you're in the advocacy world, we're professional motivators, let's say, of legislators, public officials, corporate officials. We're trying to inspire them to do the right thing. So if you look at what the Sierra Club has done for 118 years now, they have been dramatically persistent, relentless at trying to inspire legislators, public officials to take charge. So no, we won't be employing the exact same tactics that John Muir used 100 years ago, or even that David Brower used 50 years ago, or even that Carl Pope might have used 5 years ago. We're in the 21st century. We'll probably be doing a lot more things online. We'll be doing creative advertising, working with celebrities, and classic grassroots organizing and grassroots activism to either embarrass or expose public officials, corporate officials, or hopefully inspire them to bring out the best in them and inspire them to do what we all know needs to be done.
the cynics among us might say that the Sierra Club is due for some criticism too. It's that itself become just a big bureaucracy that's mostly interested in raising money to sustain itself. Is there a grain of truth in that, and does that need to be addressed?
Well, I think any group always needs a bit of a shake-up and a fresh approach. The Sierra Club is definitely big. We have 500 staff. We've got 400 groups around the country. Our size and the democratic nature of the Sierra Club is both a source of occasional frustration, but also inspiration. We are the only democratically governed environmental group in the country. Our board is elected by the members. I was elected or nominated by a democratically elected board. We have volunteers who drive most of our policies. And so the size of it, I think, makes it a little bit unwieldy, but it also gives us the best chance to reach down in the grassroots, get great ideas, and inspire public officials to do a lot more.
All right. Well, good luck. I know you've got your family waiting for you. You've been doing a lot of traveling. Michael Brune, new executive director of the Sierra Club. Thanks again, and congratulations on your new post.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
And thank you, Michael Brune and Craig Miller. Listen to Quest interview with Carl Pope on KQED Public Radio Monday morning at 6:33 and 8:33. Then tune in to Forum. And that's all for tonight. Next week on our one-hour broadcast, my in-depth conversation with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, and a look at street art in San Francisco's Mission District, and on Food and Wine this week, urban gardens and collecting leftover food for the needy. KQED.org/thisweek is where you can watch complete episodes and segments of the program, subscribe to our newsletter and our podcast, and share your thoughts about the program and our stories. I'm Belva Davis. Good night.
Funding for Climate Watch on This Week in Northern California is provided by the Mary Van Voorhees Fund and the Fallis Family Fund.